Welcome to Next Future Today with your host, Dan Keldsen. Today's episode is for all of you aspiring inspirational and must-hear speakers. It's an interview of Michael Port. You may know Michael as the author of 9 books. A few of them have become perennial bestsellers and made it onto such lists as the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and USA Today. After delivering thousands of paid speeches on the world's biggest stages, Michael and his wife, Amy, built Heroic Public Speaking HQ at 10,000 square foot performance training center to develop and nurture the next generation of professional speakers along with CEO and founders, best-selling authors, business owners, and people leading movements and advancing important causes. And the topic today is his latest book, The Referable Speaker, which is not just about being a speaker or even a professional speaker. Oh no, it's about how to get to the magic, where event organizers and the audience feel compelled to specifically recommend you to other perfect audiences and events. Let's jump on in.
All right. So, Michael, the man who puts the hero in heroic public speaking, and I'm so happy to see that you have heroic public speaking behind you. We didn't plan this.
Nope. But it's a good location for this. So
Yeah, awesome. So, welcome to the show. I've just started this latest podcast, and I wasn't planning it, but I saw you reached out because you're a client of mine, which is fantastic. My latest company, Plexicam. Thank you so much for trusting us to give us a try. We probably won't talk about it too much today, but it was a thrill to see that you flew by in the list of orders. So that's fantastic. I think that what's really interesting about your latest book, timing is everything. So it's kind of amazing. It only came out last month, right? June?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
So, and I'm just now starting this up, so it gives me a great way to tie both things together, your book and what it means to be a great speaker, in person, which is the traditional way, right, and virtually. Maybe we'll hint at that just a little bit. So the latest book is The Referable Speaker. Normally I would show people how many dog years I have of their book, but I read your book on Kindle, and it's not as exciting to just wave an iPad at you, so sorry about that. I think Next Future Today is the name of this podcast series, and the concept came last year when we were a couple months into the pandemic, and I wondered who was actually prepared and willing to dodge and weave as needed in reaction to the pandemic, who was caught completely unawares, and regardless, you can always choose to take some action today that maybe you didn't expect to do yesterday. So I think your background, just real quick, you have a very unique background from my perspective, anyhow, for a public speaker. You didn't start as a public speaker. Your background has a different story. So could you quickly tell us a little hero's journey there?
Sure. I haven't met too many people who are professional public speakers that started as professional public speakers. Maybe a handful out there, but most folks do something, of note, and then over time start getting requests to speak on, the subject that they have focused on. But my path was even a little bit more circuitous, I think. I started as an actor. So I have an MFA from NYU's graduate acting program. And afterwards, I worked for 4 years professionally in shows like Sex and the City, Third Watch, All My Children, Law and Order, Center Street, Down to Earth, The Believer, and others. And I did dozens of on-camera television commercials and hundreds of voiceovers. Voiceovers was my bread and butter when I was working in those years. Right. But, I'm a project person. And it's one of the things I loved about that world is when you get cast, if you have a big role, you feel like you have a new project, you get to dig your teeth into it for a period of time, then you move on and you start another project afterwards. But until you're famous, or at least working consistently, you're spending a lot of time just trying to get jobs.
Right.
My personality wanted to have the jobs, and I was quite young, and I just felt like, I don't know if I can wait around until maybe I get hit with that stick that says you get to work all the time. Yeah. And I just, at that age, I just didn't have that kind of patience. So I talked my way into a job for which I was completely unqualified. I told them I was unqualified, and I made my pitch as to why I thought they should give me a chance, and they did. And within a short period of time, I was actually running the division of the company, and it was a public company. And in large part because I came to it from a performer's perspective, which means that I came with a blank piece of paper and a beginner's mind.
Okay.
And so because I didn't understand how they did everything, I often found new solutions that were actually quite effective.
Yes.
And I think that speaks to the creative artist's approach, that you're always looking at the problems that you're trying to solve as an investigation. You bring your curiosity to it and allow that curiosity to lead you on a journey that will hopefully produce an answer that is incredibly meaningful and transformational for the people who want that problem solved. And that approach is something that helped me in business. And I spent a number of years working for others. And then eventually in 2005, started my own business, started writing books around the same time.
Right.
And the rest is history.
Right. Yeah, it seems like you've been doing heroic public speaking forever. It certainly feels like I've been aware of it forever, but it's been 10 years, maybe, something like that?
Not even, no.
Okay.
So Book Yourself Solid was where I focused the first 10, 15 years of my career. Okay. And then 2013 is when I started piloting HBS. Okay. Amy, who is my wife, Amy Port, joined me in 2014. And then that's been our focus ever since. Okay. So time does fly, but it has definitely not been forever.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Nothing's forever, but that's a different story. So I like to pull from people's backgrounds. You know, I have a very also non-traditional, I don't know I guess I don't know anybody who really has a traditional background. So that seems kind of silly to say anyhow, but, speaking, most people do not come to speaking like they pop out of the hatch, ta-da, they're a speaker, right? Usually you have to work at it. I've been partnered with a Greek for a long time, so I get, and I used to be interested in Greek mythology. Are you familiar with the story of Sisyphus?
Yep.
So, for those who aren't, the Greek god who's trying to push up a massive boulder up a mountain, and it keeps falling down and crushing him, and he has to keep starting over and over again. That, to me, seems like the opposite of what you would be trying to do if you want to be a referable speaker. You're trying like hell to get a gig, and that gig is probably underpaid, maybe not paid at all, who knows.
Yeah.
Or I thought it was interesting that you go through examples where you can be super busy as a speaker, but still you're on the sidelines. You're like, if you're in Vegas, you're at the room that's 2 miles down, and maybe somebody sees you, but maybe not. So what is a referable speaker? And then we'll get into why do you want to be a referable speaker?
Sure. So Andrew Davis and I wrote The Referable Speaker because we wanted to answer one question, one burning question that we thought that the industry had not answered yet, at least not to our satisfaction. And the question was, what's the formula for building a sustainable career as a professional speaker?
Okay.
And there's the operative words in there are formula and sustainable.
Yeah.
Because you can book a lot of first gigs. You know, when you first come out of the gate, you could book a lot of first gigs, but if those first gigs don't produce second, third, fourth, and fifth gigs, it's very hard to have a sustainable speaking career. Right. So we believe that you don't get gigs, you earn them. And there is one thing that earns you the keynote stage easily, and that's fame. Most of us, however, do not have fame. Right. So that's not something that we can rely on, and it's certainly not something we can fake, and it is definitely not something that we should pursue as the primary way of becoming a professional speaker if we want a sustainable speaking career. Right. Because you might only have 15 minutes of fame, and then after that, nobody cares. Right. So we looked at what does it actually take to build a sustainable speaking career, no fame required. And there was one thing that in our research kept coming up again and again and again and again. And when I say it, it may seem obvious, but it's not necessarily how most speakers approach the business. The one thing that is most important to your success as a speaker is the speech you give. Full stop.
Right.
Because there are three fundamentals in the speaking industry from the speaker's perspective, three business fundamentals. Number one, what we call stage side leads.
Right.
A stage side lead is any lead that you get because you delivered a speech. So it might happen right after you deliver a speech, stage side. Somebody might come up to you afterwards and say, hey, that was amazing. Listen, we've got an event in Provo, Utah on March 23rd. Are you available? What's your fee?
Right.
That's a great stage side
Right.
lead. But it may happen next week when they call you up on the phone, or an assistant calls you up on the phone, or they fill out a form on your website in the middle of your speech. Those are stage side
Right.
leads. Stage side leads book at a faster rate, at higher fees, with fewer objections than any other type of lead in the speaking world. The second business fundamental is what we call the power of compounding gigs. Because if you get stage side leads every single time you deliver a presentation, so let's say, Dan, you give a presentation today and you get 4 stage side leads and you book 2 of those stage side leads.
Right.
Because you really should generally book at about a 50% ratio. If you're booking at higher than a 50% ratio, you probably need to raise your fees.
Right.
That's a good time to raise your
Right.
fees. But let's say you book at a 50% ratio. That means those 4 leads turned into 2 gigs. Well, those 2 gigs now ideally should net you at least 4 leads each. That's 8 leads. You book 4 more gigs. Those 4 gigs produce another. You see how this keeps going?
Yes.
So over time, the speech itself keeps producing more gigs. So when someone says, what do you do for marketing? You say, I pick up the phone, or I talk to people at the side of the stage after they see my presentation.
Right.
And then the third business fundamental is the referral tree. That might require a larger conversation, but in a nutshell, if you have a healthy referral tree, meaning you're serving a number of different fractals, I can explain what that is in a moment if you would like, on that referral tree, those gigs will produce more opportunities in other fractals, and eventually you'll have a very, very healthy referral tree producing lots of leads for you and a sustainable speaking career that can last you for a lifetime, really.
Yeah. So this it's funny how things kind of come back around again. So when I saw the word fractal written in your book, I'm like, wow, I have not heard that phrase for 20, 25, 30 years maybe. And I don't remember the last time I heard it in a business book. I read it in science fiction books, and I went to Berklee College of Music, so I studied music, and I was doing computer music for a portion there, which it turns out is mostly not music, and that's why I stopped doing that. But listen to the sound of a fractal. It's much more interesting to look at a fractal that's animated, perhaps, than it is to listen to one, as it turns out. But the concept is you can keep zooming in and sort of never ending. Right. For people who aren't aware of that.
Yeah. The concept behind it, I mean, the concept comes from mathematics, and it's a fractal is a self-sustaining, self-repeating pattern.
There you go.
So the reason we chose to use this term fractal in the book rather than niche or target market is because really no other term would do if we're trying to create a sustainable speaking business. Right. Because you want to design a speech for a particular audience that will produce lead after lead after lead after lead after lead in that same audience until you jump to another fractal because it's adjacent to the fractal that you are focused on. So for example, if you were focused on accountants, it's likely that at one point you're going to get some attorneys in that room also. Mm-hmm. And an attorney's going to come up to you and say, hey, this is really interesting. I am part of a group of attorneys. This would be fantastic for our group. We have an event coming up on April 2nd. What's your fee and are you available? Well, it's another stage side lead that just jumped you into another market, another fractal that will allow you to produce more stage side leads in that fractal. And then the business just keeps growing and growing and growing.
Right.
What most people do when they market themselves as speakers is they try to go for the whole industry.
Right.
So think about the tree, a fractal tree, where all these like small fractals, these where you can be a big fish in a smaller pond are at the smaller branches at the end of the tree.
Right.
And the trunk of the tree is the domain. So if you work in financial services is the trunk. And then all these different branches lead to lots of different segments, lots of different fractals in that overall market.
Right.
But most people, when they just try to approach the industry, they just go after the trunk. But there's too much competition at the trunk. At the trunk, they're competing against actually famous people in that particular industry or market.
Right.
And the way that you actually earn that trunk is by getting all the branches on the outside of or to the top of the tree, and then eventually that leads you down to becoming really, really well known in the trunk of the tree. So stateside leads, the power of compounding gigs, and building a healthy fractal tree, or mapping your fractal path, which is something that we teach in the book, allows the speaker to see what their journey can look like without spending most of their time marketing. Instead, what they can do is focus on the speech so that they're delivering a transformational, referable speech.
Right. Because
the speech you're delivering today could be the same speech in 1 year, but twice as good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought up the whole, so the fractal piece, which, that just, everything sprung back to life for me. Everything I used to know about fractals. So that's an exciting moment. But the difference between that sort of, find the periphery versus, everybody will say you need to find your niche, right? And maybe you don't know what the hell your niche is for a while. So that's one problem. I think part of what is interesting about referable speakers, or being referable, period, in whether it's consulting or whatever, part of what social media has done for us in a positive way is there is proof of this is the stuff that you believe. It's what you deliver. It's how you operate. It's how you interact with others. And if people get a taste test one way or another, then they have already sold themselves, and they're referring themselves to you rather than you having to cold call or spend money on marketing or anything like that. So it's, you never know where people might pull you, and sometimes it can be a little dangerous if you get pulled off into too many different directions or into a niche that you really is going to be a dead end potentially. But it sounds like basically kind of what you were saying with your original, your background, having a beginner's mind. A new opportunity comes in, they're going to book you. Why not? You should see if that is a niche or a piece of your fractal tree that you want to be a part of. Play around with that a bit, and then maybe you step back.
Yeah, you can certainly investigate a fractal and see if it's a place that you'd like to play.
Right.
For example, many years ago, over a decade now, I was invited to speak at an association for balloon twisters.
Right, I remember that.
Full fee they were willing to pay me. So I said, sign me up. And
you weren't paid in
the event
balloons,
was a couple hours. Unfortunately, was not paid in balloons. But I would have taken, balloons stuffed with cash, certainly. But it was a couple hours from the nearest airport at a tiny little casino somewhere out in Wisconsin. And I did my speech. It went really well. I blew it up. You see what I did there? And then I went home, and that week I got 2 more calls from 2 more balloon twisting associations. I had no idea there were more balloon twisting associations, but there were. Now, I decided to let those opportunities float away.
Oh, God.
Because I decided that's not the fractal that I wanted. But if I wanted to focus on that fractal, I probably could have then jumped into the magician space, because magicians are also sometimes doing balloon twisting. And then there's the illusionists, and there might be, other fringe type entertainers. And for folks who do balloon twisting and card playing, I'm a fringe entertainer myself. So that's not an insult to say fringe entertainer. Yes. I think it's actually a compliment. So you see how there's all these fractals that are often very adjacent to each other, and you end up picking up lots of gigs in those different fractals anytime you are seen delivering a speech that is referable. But here's the thing. Most of the time, the metric that people use to evaluate whether or not they're doing a good job as a speaker is how much praise they get.
Right.
Oh, people told me I was great, and they gave me a lot of applause, or even they stood up and applauded, or the meeting planner said I was great. Well, that may be, but those are just words.
Right.
So how do you evaluate whether or not you've been effective as a speaker?
Right.
This is an important question that each speaker needs to ask themselves, and I think needs to be able to answer.
Right.
So there's a couple different things that you might consider. Number one is, did you do what you intended to do? Meaning, are you able to deliver a reliable speech? Meaning, can you do it the same way every single time?
Right.
Because meeting planners, in our research, we discovered are very, very anxious when they have speakers who they don't think can deliver reliably. Because what they saw is what they want.
Right.
And this is something that led us to the paradox of customization. In the industry, teaching this, I see this again and again and again and again, but we also found it in our research. Very often, speakers rely heavily on customization. And they do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, they think that's what the industry wants, because meeting planners will often say, oh, can you customize this for us? Also, they think it's a selling proposition.
Right. Yes.
They say, mine's going to be custom for you. I'm going to do things for you that I don't do for anybody else.
Right.
And it's going to be special. So we're going to have a special relationship. That's what it feels like.
Right.
But the experienced meeting planners, they know that if you have to customize it in order for it to be effective for a particular audience, that means two things. Number one, you haven't already designed a speech that is effective for that audience. So why do I want to hire somebody who doesn't already serve that audience and know how to do it? Number two, if you're going to customize it, that means much of the material will be new. You will have not spent a lot of time on it. You will not have worked the material to the degree that you know it will work reliably every single time, regardless of what kind of mood you're in, whether or not you've got the flu or feel really healthy, what's going on at the venue. There should be nothing that can throw you off being able to deliver that. That's how reliable the meeting planner wants you to be. And so the paradox of customization is something that actually hangs people up. They think, oh, customization is actually going to be a benefit to the organization. But really what they're saying is, I just wing my speeches and say I customize it. And, I'm a subject matter expert, so I can do that. If I have my structure, I have my outline, I'm fine. I can just, off the cuff, it'll be brilliant.
Straight off the slide. It'll be no problem.
A speech is not a podcast.
Yes.
A speech is not a panel. A keynote speech is a performance that is designed to create a transformational experience for the audience in some way. It is designed to get them feeling different, thinking different, and then hopefully acting different. And that's not something that just happens on a whim. And if you think you're going to rise to the occasion, I think you'll be surprised. You'll more likely fall back on your preparation. So the amount of preparation you have done will be the determining factor in your effectiveness when you're actually up there speaking. And this is true for any high-level discipline. This is not something that we made up. We're really coming to the industry and saying, please, let's raise the bar and let's look at this as a craft. And if you want to be a professional level transformational speaker, meaning even if you get paid on the back end because you book a lot of business out of your speeches, you don't care about getting paid on the front end. I imagine you want to go up there and you want to do the best job you can possibly do, meaning what you're capable of doing. And I think most of the speakers who are working today are not actually performing at the level that they're capable of performing.
And now for a quick ad from our sponsor, Plexicam.com, the nearly invisible alternative to tripods and teleprompters. Tired of being on Zoom calls and feeling like you're not connecting at all with the people on the other side? Put an end-to-screen stare with PlexiCam, a modern and nearly invisible tripod alternative. Mount any webcam you have for perfect eye contact with your audience. PlexiCam lets you put your webcam anywhere you want on your screen and look great because you're always making eye contact. PlexiCam assembles in minutes, is portable, and is almost invisible. Attach an LED or ring light to improve your video even more. With versions for every monitor and camera combination, you can use PlexiCam with laptops as small as 13 inches to displays as big as 65 inches or more. You can even use your full-size mirrorless camera, like the popular Sony 5000 and 6000 series. PlexiCam turns any monitor into a teleprompter alternative without requiring special software or a dedicated screen. Try PlexiCam by choosing the best fit for your screen and camera at plexicam.com. PlexiCam, the clear choice for great connections. And now, back to the interview.
If they developed more craft.
Right. Yeah, and it's a shame that, even at Berkeley, I didn't pursue the performance track where it's specifically built to grill you on your stage technique and, comforting your, calming your nerves and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things you can study about music, like anything else. So that was not my thing. But, even for people that pursue, like MBAs or business degrees or anything like that, where you would think that, public speaking isn't necessarily, keynote speaking isn't what every manager or CEO is going to do. But, public speaking generally, the advice overall is, it's there's the old saying, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Well, it's practice, but it's not just any old practice, as it turns out. It's some specific practice, and there's design. I just interviewed a couple days ago, Chris Dyer. His book is Remote Work. He talks about deliberative design. And you would think that designing in general should be deliberative, or else what is it? But deliberately, there's a whole bunch of structure, and we're going to run out of time here in a couple of minutes. But I think you have a lot of really great examples that are, unfortunately, outside of. I have not done heroic public speaking yet, anyhow. But outside of what you do, it's pretty much up to people to wing it. There's not a, I'm going to go to school for 4 years to become a heroic public speaker. That'd be pretty wild.
I had that opportunity. Yeah, my wife and I had that opportunity as actors. She was able to go to Yale to get a master's in acting. I was able to go to NYU to get a master's in acting, and it was very transformative for us. Right. And so we're trying to do with heroic public speaking. We've built an organization that is at the same level as those master's programs for creative artists, but for the professional speaker, because we feel like it's not fair to ask somebody to try to be a transformational performer and not give them the opportunity to have access to the craft. Right. So in the Referable Speaker, in the section on the entertainment factor, which is one of the three primary factors that influences how much you can get paid, there's fame, entertainment, and expertise, and where you fall on the continuum of those three primary factors will influence the fee that you can charge for any given event in relation to the other speakers that they're considering. And that's something that we detail extensively in the Referable Speaker. But in the entertainment factor section of the book, we focus on two different rehearsal methods. One is the rehearsal method for a new speech, and that's something that we teach here at Heroic Public Speaking. It's the 7-step rehearsal protocol. Oh, okay. And then there's also the 5-minute method, where you continue to improve 5 minutes at a time of a speech that you've already created, so that, as I said earlier, the speech you have today can be the same speech in a year, but twice as good.
Yes, right. Okay. We're about to run out of time. I would actually, there's a bunch of things, I think that as a musician, being taught how to rehearse or practice or whatever you want to call it. If you over rehearse the front and under rehearse the end or the middle or whatever, then you're going to feel super confident. The audience will love it, and then it'll fall apart, and then you're screwed. So there's smarter ways to do that. We should probably talk about that in another session. Just to wrap it up, so I think the beginning of your journey, you sort of reinvented yourself. Well, you definitely did reinvent yourself, and I love that you pitched yourself for a job that you acknowledged you had no idea how to do it and you weren't qualified for. And you created your Next Future Today at that point. You did the same when you stepped into public speaking and heroic public speaking. If there was one simple next thing that somebody could do today that wants to get on the path of being a referable speaker, what is it that they should do?
Well, recognize first and foremost that unless you're famous, meeting planners are first buying your speech, then the idea, then you.
Yeah, okay.
When you're famous, the inverse is true. Right. When you're famous, first they buy you, then your speech, then your idea. So they say, Mr. Gladwell, are you available on January 2nd? What's your fee? We'll pay anything. $8 billion would be fine. What would you like to speak on? That's how it goes with Malcolm. But for the rest of us, first they're buying that speech, then the idea, and then you. So what I would say is stop spending your time and your money on marketing yourself as a speaker, and instead reallocate that time and resources to creating a speech that is a referable speech that can produce stateside leads every time you deliver it. That's where the real work gets done for the professional speaker. Yep. That's what builds a sustainable speaking career. And that's something that you have the ability to do if you're willing to work toward it and earn it. Right. It's not given, but you can earn that through good, honest, old-fashioned elbow grease.
Right, yeah, work comes in overalls, and most people don't answer the door.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, so I'm so glad we had a chance to chat. It's always a thrill when I see somebody that I know come across ordering product from us, which is fantastic. Folks, if you want to,
I've been using it every day since I've got it. Just so you know, it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm not in my, as you can tell, I'm not in my office right now, but when I'm in my office, it sits right on one of my computer screens.
Okay. Fantastic. Yeah. And I'd love to get any and all feedback. If it's fantastic, that's great. And if it's not, I still want to hear that, because I talk to clients every single day, super pros like you and people who are answering customer support calls. So all the feedback is good from every perspective.
Great.
So I just want to point people to michaelport.com if you want to find out more about Michael's background, all of his 9 books, I think it is. Is it 9?
About that, yeah.
You lose track at some point.
At some point you stop counting.
Yeah. Okay. So, and at some point I do plan on getting to heroic public speaking. I need to amp my speaking back up to a level where I feel like I would benefit from getting the extra nuance. Well, and all sorts of nuggets and boulders that I definitely don't have right now. But in the meantime, I definitely want to stay in touch, and maybe we can talk about rehearsal specifically in a separate session.
Great. That'd be fun. Yeah, I'd love to.
Awesome. Cheers from Boston.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.